Okay, so this is the first negative review I've done on this channel. Now, before we get into any reasons as to why, I'd like to clarify that this is in no way a personal attack on any of the cast members or members of the production. But unfortunately, for whatever reasons, this show just isn't working at all for me. And I'm going to break down my reasonings as to why Ahsoka has fallen short, in my opinion. As with any negative review of something that I have on my channel, my aim is to explain my points in a way so that you, the audience, understand exactly where I'm coming from, so that if you agree with me, you can use this exact argument and examples as the video showcases in your own discussions with others as to why you didn't enjoy the show. But if you did enjoy the show, then great, because I'm not here to spoil anyone's fun. But if you are interested, hear me out and I'll do my best to ensure that you can see where I'm coming from. Now, before we begin, I'd like to quickly clarify my status as a Star Wars fan. I've only ever watched Star Wars content, never read any of the comics or tie-in material, and whilst I've seen all of the Clone Wars, of which seasons 6 and 7 I enjoyed thoroughly, I have not seen Rebels, only clips of it. So I'm going to come at this argument from the perspective of a casual Star Wars fan, to explain what Ahsoka is lacking so far in the first 3 episodes that are out, especially for the more casual fans of the Star Wars brand. There are a few main points I'd like to address, so without further ado, let's get into it. The first is the show's incredibly, glacially slow pace. Every scene feels far too long for the actual events taking place within it. Now, normally, this isn't something we'd think about when watching a show. Usually, a scene is paced in such a way that the plot moves along at the same time as the scene. Take this example from episode 1 of The Mandalorian in season 1. This is the first scene in which the audience is introduced to the Mandalorian character. As you can see, it begins with a shot of the character clearly searching for something, then pans to a location shot to give the audience an indication as to where this character is.
Please, I have credits. Take them.
We cut to the character being mistreated by others in a bar. This gives us some indication as to the type of behaviour and other characters that inhabit this world. Those 2 shots connect together by having our character enter the bar, with the music setting the tones to how the other thugs feel about our character. Then, as they try to provoke him and he remains silent, we get some information on this character's personality. This character has a silent confidence about them, but we're not quite sure why yet.
Mando?
We get a name drop, Mando. Now we have a name to give to our character. It'll later be revealed that this is a short name for Mandalorians, but Mando is enough to go on.
Salary, Beskar?
Here we have a reference to Beskar, an important plot detail for the world building and establishing the lore around the Mandalorians, and this is set up nice and early on in the show. As the fight breaks out, we're given a quick insight into Mando's skills and abilities, confirming to us why he's got that quiet confidence about him.
Is that a bounty puck?
After the fight, we learn about Mando's profession through the other character revealing that Mando presents a bounty puck on the table. Therefore, the audience can infer that Mando is a bounty hunter.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Then, Mando's cold nature is revealed in his first line. Then we cut to the intro. So in our introductory scene to Mando, we learn a little bit about the world, we learn our character's name is Mando, we see his skills, and we can assume that he's a bounty hunter and that he's ruthless. All of this is achieved in about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Now, let's explore the same type of scene with Ahsoka. Technically, the first scene of this show reveals the villains to us, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Sometimes revealing your villain before the hero can actually build suspense and tension in a story. Take Nolan's The Dark Knight, which starts off with the scene of the Joker before ever introducing Batman. But for the purposes of this comparison, let's compare the introduction of the Mandalorian as a character to Ahsoka's introduction in Ahsoka, which turns out to be the second scene in the first episode. Now, before anyone sounds off in the comments, I know that Ahsoka is an already established Star Wars character, having been in the Clone Wars and Rebels and making her live action debut in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Whereas the introductory scene we've just looked at for The Mandalorian is the first time anyone has ever seen the Mandalorian character. So it has more legwork to do in terms of building up and setting up this show. But a good show will still give the audience enough details on its own so that the viewer doesn't need to have watched 10 million other things to understand what's going on. The show should make sense of it on its own without being tied into larger franchises. What's more, in the case of Ahsoka, is much of the casual viewer's understanding of that character stems from her appearances in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, which don't reveal all too much about the character. So the first scene of her in her own spin-off seems to be the perfect place to quickly establish this character. So, with all that in mind, how does her first scene stack up by comparison? Well, it begins with a character/location shot, just like The Mandalorian did. Then we see a little bit of use of her lightsabers and force abilities to cut through the ground, so some establishing of abilities, which is a very good sign. But then here, this is where Ahsoka starts to fall off, in my opinion. The following part of her introductory scene drags on for far, far, far too long, revealing way too little. We see her interacting with this Indiana Jones-like puzzle without any explanation as to why she's there and what she's doing. And this scene drags on for a few minutes without any dialogue whatsoever. Eventually, a strange unknown object is revealed to the audience as a result of Ahsoka fiddling with this puzzle. Now, Mando's first line in the first episode of The Mandalorian revealed something about the cold nature of the character, whereas Ahsoka's first line is,
Yang. I found it.
revealing both nothing about the character or what it is that she's found.
The map. Give it to us.
What would you rather I did? Just
Then we have a bit of action showcasing her abilities and tactical intelligence, as well as telling the audience that she isn't the only one looking for what is now revealed to be a map. Then she escapes with an oversized explosion and the scene ends. So, what have we learned in this opening scene? Not a lot by comparison to that Mandalorian opening. There's a character, seemingly a Jedi, who solved a puzzle, got a map that others are after, and that is really it. We know nothing about this character's personality, we know nothing about the world this is set in, or why this character is looking for the map in the first place. And if this was your first time watching this character, you don't even know her name yet. The few things that are achieved in a scene that lasts over 7.5 minutes, which is considerably longer than that of the scene in The Mandalorian, which establishes not only the same type of elements, but also establishes more elements so the audience has more to latch onto. So less is told to the audience, it takes longer to tell, and I think the biggest culprit in terms of problems I have with this scene is the puzzle solving part, because it's far too long, and due to it having no setup prior, it feels boring, because the audience has no understanding as to why she's there in the first place. Now, ambiguity in a story can build suspense. Sometimes not having all the details from the get-go can actually enhance an audience engagement with the story. Take Rian Johnson's Knives Out, a movie which is built around drip feeding its audience with details rather than giving them all in order. But as an introductory scene to the Ahsoka character, in a show where her name is the title, this just doesn't cut it for me. It reveals far too little for the bloated runtime that this scene lasts. This leads me nicely into my second element of criticism I have for the show, which is its over-reliance on its viewers being Rebels and Clone Wars viewers, Rebels especially. This show is very clearly a live-action continuation of the Rebels storyline, which, by the way, is absolutely fine. You can have a story that overarches from one show or film to another. Look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. This is perhaps the best example we have of this concept working. But in order for such a concept to work, you need to ensure that the details necessary for the plot to make sense are carried over into the new movie or show. And this again is another area in which Ahsoka falls apart for me. The show rushes through its explanations of the Rebels canon at a rapid pace, not giving their viewer the time nor the info to fully grasp what came before. The way the show has introduced Ezra in the first 3 episodes, it's rushed. The details aren't clear, nor the connections between characters. Why does Hera care about Ezra? It's not revealed any more than the fact that they say that they have past connections.
Just another attempt to gain New Republic resources to aid in what has ultimately been your personal quest to find Ezra Bridger. Earl Thrawn is dead. And I'm sorry to say it is my opinion that your friend Ezra Bridger heroically died with him.
You don't know that.
Who is Ezra? How does he link to Ahsoka? We're shown that Sabine cares about Ezra, and Sabine is Ahsoka's apprentice, apparently. Although last time I saw Ahsoka, she claimed to be...
I am no Jedi.
So how do all these characters link up? And a quick shot of a mural on a wall will not suffice. This is all the more bizarre given how the show wastes its runtime. Let's take the bike scene with Sabine in episode 1. This adds nothing, and I truly do mean nothing, to the plot. The scene where she's absent from the speech and her at home would have sufficed. And if you wanted to show off her bike skills, you could have done so in a quick shot or two, not a whole sequence that goes on for 3 minutes, achieving absolutely nothing. This just adds to the mystery to me as to why this show went wrong. It's not like they didn't have the time to explain the Rebels canon properly. They just chose not to, and used the runtime for mundane and meaningless sequences. The next element I want to discuss are some highly stupid or dumb plot conveniences, as they're called, that push the plot of the show forwards. A good example of this is in episode 1, in which Ahsoka leaves Sabine with the map, just after Sabine tells her she wants to go elsewhere with the map. Ahsoka says no because it'd be too dangerous, but before Ahsoka is called off by Huyang, then why does she stupidly leave the map with Sabine? It's no surprise that Sabine runs off with it. In fact, it's basically expected now that the audience has been shown Sabine's character traits, and it's this dumb moment that kicks off the plot so far. The Fallen Jedi characters, just on a side note, I'm not quite sure whether or not Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati are technically Sith or Fallen Jedi. Perhaps this will be clarified to us as the show progresses. Nevertheless, the Fallen Jedi would have never gotten their hands on the map if not for Sabine's defiance of orders, which Ahsoka should have anticipated and prevented from happening. Then we have the convenience of the map being solved or opened by Sabine right before the enemy arrive. On top of the other conveniences, this starts to stand out more, because this plot seems to be based on a series of conveniences rather than more logical events, and as a result, littler things that might have got away with it in the past suddenly start to stand out. Another dumb plot beat is that the fact that at the end of episode 1, Sabine loses in a fight against Shin Hati and is stabbed with a lightsaber. I repeat, with a lightsaber, through the torso, and by the next episode... Remember the times when such a wound would actually kill people? Had Sabine been killed here, it would have set up a really interesting arc for Ahsoka to go on in this series, feeling the guilt of losing her apprentice. paralleling the way that Anakin lost Ahsoka when she was but an apprentice. This would have been an excellent way to introduce Hayden Christensen's Anakin into the plot and tie Ahsoka's whole life together into one tightly knit narrative. It would have enhanced the reasoning behind why Ahsoka is going after Thrawn and his allies by providing a new reason relevant and specific to the show itself, thereby giving newcomers to the Ahsoka character a part of her story to attach to and to allow them to feel the pain Ahsoka goes through. With some live-action flashbacks to pivotal Rebels moments between Ahsoka and Sabine, this could have been a really nice narrative that ties Ahsoka together in a way that both satisfies both long-time fans of the characters and newcomers to the show. I think this leads me into my last major point of criticism around the first 3 episodes of the show so far. Ahsoka, and all the other characters for that matter, apart from Sabine, feel bland. Don't get me wrong, Rosario Dawson is an incredible actress, and veterans of the craft such as David Tennant and Ray Stevenson turn in as good a performances as the script allows. But that's exactly the problem. The script doesn't really give them much to work with. The characters all feel quite cold and emotionless. A stoic character in a story can work, but they also have to have a humanity to them. Take Batman, a character known for his stoicism. The best versions of Batman have scenes in which their humanity shines through. For example, as Kevin Conroy's animated Batman, with scenes like,
I know I made a promise, but I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy.
and
Are you all right, sir?
I'm tired, Alfred.
showcasing the fact that the character is indeed human and has emotions and feelings. Whereas in Ahsoka, not only do the stoic characters currently lack that, but also every other character who isn't Sabine is stoic in nature, so it makes the characters all feel very samey and bland as a result. There's not enough contrast between characters for the show to work well. Contrast is important in a cast of characters. Breaking Bad wouldn't have worked if both of the main characters had the same personality. It's the combination of Jesse and Walt that makes the show engaging to watch because they're so starkly different from one another. Ahsoka seems to deeply lack this contrast in character personalities, creating a show that feels quite emotionally inaccessible to its viewership so far, especially as mentioned if their first experience of Ahsoka is in this show. So they are my main issues with the first 3 episodes of Ahsoka. Despite the fact there's 3 more episodes to go, and I will be tuning in, mainly just to see what they do with Anakin or Darth Vader, given Hayden's return. But I don't feel that most of the issues I've pointed out here can be rectified with future episodes, as the damage of poor quality writing has already been done, in my opinion. However, before I wrap this up, I would quickly like to say that there are a few elements of this show so far that are worth some praise. I think the costume design and set designs have been pretty cool so far. I like that Red Forest planet especially. I like the moody vibe to it, and I think the lightsaber choreography has been relatively solid. Not the best we've ever seen, but certainly not the worst either. I'll admit, amongst the dumb moments in the writing, there's been a few clever ones that I have appreciated. Namely, Ahsoka cutting through the floor to reduce the number of droids she has to fight at the start of episode 1. I like that idea a lot because it was clever and much more interesting to watch than just having her take them all on and win easily. So, my take on Ahsoka so far is that it's a show that has been deeply frustrating, mainly because it has so much potential to deliver something of much, much, much higher quality, and could have done a far better job exploring and explaining Ahsoka's backstory and character to viewers who aren't familiar with the animated shows like The Clone Wars and Rebels. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.